Welcome to Conversations. I am Bammy.
And this is KyMichele. We've got a great topic to discuss today, so you guys just sit back, relax, and listen in to our conversation.
Let's go.
Thank you for joining in on another episode of Conversations, where issues that affect the effectiveness of the church are discussed. This is KyMichele, and I'm solo today as my co-host Bammy takes a brief hiatus, some personal time off. However, I have a special guest with me. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, I'm Kimmy.
Kimmy. And who are you exactly, Kimmy?
Your daughter.
Oh, and are you related to anybody else on this podcast?
Yes, Uncle Bammy.
Uncle Bammy. All right. And yes, my daughter is joining me for a little bit here. And today I want to talk about things that are going on in and around the world because 2020 has offered new challenges for many of us, including children. So, Kimmy, tell me, what is something that has been hard for you this year?
School.
School? How has school been hard?
Because I'm starting school tomorrow and I don't know if my teacher's going to help me with stuff like I was at school and explain like my other teacher did, as easy as like it was at school.
Because you were actually at school and in the building, and it's going to be different because you're going to be doing it like over, the computer or virtual as we call it.
Yes.
And so you're a little scared about that.
Uh-huh.
And so how else does that make you feel about school and how we're having to do everything now?
Sad.
It makes you feel sad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us are feeling what we would call weary for adults, and you all might say sad. And today we're going to talk about it. Do you want to know a little bit more about how to feel better and not be sad about school?
Yes.
All right, well, let's get to it. So, listeners, I'll ask you next. How are you doing? And I'm not asking so that you can give me that blessed and highly favored answer. I really want to know what's going on in your world through this crazy time that we're all experiencing. How have you been coping? Have you been able to fight the good fight of faith and persevere or even thrive during these times? Or have you noticed that you're a little moody, on edge, or even stressed? Have you felt a bit out of control and helpless? Maybe some anxiety or perhaps even some depression? I gotta tell you, I fall in the category of all of the above. And I have been, strong and full of faith, but I've also been feeling myself being inept and out of control. And let me tell you, especially with my children, with little Miss Kimmy, I've been stretched emotionally, and also with my young adult child. And I'm just trying to figure out how to be a mom during these times. Kimmy is old enough to understand everything going on, and I have to navigate adult issues with her on her level. And oftentimes it's left me drained and questioning my parental effectiveness. Don't even go into the stressors surrounding her school, as she just mentioned. And then I have no control about what my young adult daughter decides to do. I give suggestions, admonitions, and nudges, but ultimately she has to do what is right for her during these times. But between the pandemic, economic uncertainty, the fight against systemic racism, and all of the other newsworthy events taking place across the world, the truth is 2020 has pushed the envelope on emotions for people all across the globe. So I just want to take a moment and address some of these emotions, unfamiliar burdens, and weariness we may be experiencing. So back to my line of questioning. With everything that has taken place this year, how have you navigated this new normal? How are you doing? As I mentioned, I've had strong faith-filled days and other days when I'm fully reminded of my frailty as a human being. And when I am feeling less than able to cope lately, I've been able to turn to a familiar passage of scripture found in Matthew chapter 11. It's where Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." The first thing that I'm reminded of is that I simply need to come to Jesus. The way we find rest for our souls when we are weary and heavy laden is to first come to Him. We cannot rely solely on our own strength. I'm sure many of us have tried that at one time or another, because I know I have, but it certainly has gained mixed reviews when I've done it. We can take ourselves so far before we find ourselves burning out, tapping out, or just breaking out. When we rely on ourselves or others, our capacity is finite, it's limited. We often run out of steam and end up feeling burdened and weary. And in this self-sufficient world that we live in, we often forget that our true strength and resilience comes from God. And I'm not negating or implying that we don't have giftings and talents and training, and I'm not saying that we are completely without control over our thoughts and emotions, but what I am saying is that we have limits, all of us. So we come to Jesus because we realize that we have limitations. When we realize that we cannot do it all on our own, we can then take the next step in this passage of Scripture and what it's showing us, and that's to take Jesus' yoke upon us. And quite simply stated, it's just that we have to surrender our burdens and our limitations over to Jesus. And I know that surrender and submit are trigger words for some people, but surrendering and submitting to Jesus doesn't come with the same hang-ups that we struggle with when we're talking about surrendering or submitting to other people. Just remember this: Jesus doesn't force us to come to Him. He doesn't thrust Himself on us. He simply says, come to Him. He wants to help bear the burden, but He does need our permission first. And I think we often forget that Jesus never forces us to do anything. He patiently waits for us to come to Him. And I used to have a problem with this, and I used to wish that Jesus would just knock down my walls, pick me up, throw me over His shoulder, and take me away from my situation, or in some cases, take me away from myself. Let's just be real. But the truth is that He doesn't really want people to feel obligated to do what He says. And it's the same with us. We'd prefer it if our children, our spouses, our friends, and loved ones did things for us because it wasn't out of obligation and it wasn't out of fear, but they did it out of love and genuine respect. And it's just the same with Jesus. We have a choice, and it's called free will, and we're either free to accept Him or reject Him. But it is totally up to each of us to choose that. And if we choose Jesus, this passage says that we have to learn of Him because He is gentle and humble, or lowly in heart. And many of us have an inaccurate view of who Jesus is because we simply haven't taken the time to get to know Him. In Psalm 34, it says, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good." And that is exactly what Jesus is trying to tell us in this passage. We just need to try Him. We need to learn of Him. We need to see how gentle He is with us. We will see that He's not like other people that we've encountered that are boastful or rough or full of disappointment and don't have our best interest at heart. If we learn of Him, we begin to see His kindness, His gentleness, His understanding, His healing, His teaching, what grieved Him, what angered Him, what astonished Him, what moved Him. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. We just need to take His yoke upon us and learn of Him because He is gentle and humble, and we will find rest for our soul. And in the midst of everything that's going on in the world and in my life, that's where I want to find myself, finding rest for my soul. I want to settle into the rest for my soul that comes from God. I don't know about you, but I often forget that we are souls and that we happen to be in a human body. Just let that sink in for a second. We're not bodies that happen to have a soul. We are souls that happen to have bodies. Now, as an aside, I'd like to explain what I believe about our soul. I believe that we are made of three parts: our body, our spirit, and our soul. Our spirit is what connects with God through Jesus, and our soul is what makes us who we are. Our soul is where our mind and our personality, our feelings and our emotions and our will and motivations are. And to put it more plainly, and in keeping with what we've been talking about here, this is where our burdens and our weariness also reside, in our soul. And once we fully grasp this, I think it becomes easier for us to understand how we relate to God. When we come to Jesus and submit to Him, we are submitting the only thing that can truly relate to Him, which is our spirit. It's through the Spirit that we commune and have a relationship with God, because we have submitted our spirit to Jesus. Our soul, which is our emotions, will, and our mind, can then be gently transitioned into peace and rest because our spirit man has connected with God through Jesus. In that rest, He can free us from our stress, our anxiety, and our feelings of hopelessness, and replace it with easiness, lightness, and rest. When this life of new normals start to weigh you down, I encourage you to remember that you do have an option, not one that is forced on you, not one that's an additional burden to bear, but an option to experience rest in your soul. Yes, we will continue to have trials and tribulations. Yes, we can probably count on 2020 bringing even more new normals. But when we surrender our spirit to the one who is gentle and lowly in heart, we can experience these new normals, feeling rested and at peace in our soul, because we have taken on the only yoke that matters, the yoke of Jesus. I encourage you to go to Matthew 11, read over it, meditate, and pray over that, and find rest for your soul. I hope that today's episode has been helpful and even hopeful, and I really do want to know how you've been doing and would love to hear from you this week. Please leave a comment if you're listening via YouTube, and you can also contact me and let me know how you've been doing via social media on all the different platforms. You can just plug in at 46Conversations. And I'm going to ask my special guest, Kimmy, what's one way that you can deal with the sadness that you've been feeling about school?
Come to Jesus.
Come to Jesus. Yes, you can. I hope our listeners will do the same. And I hope and pray that you and your loved ones are well and that you will prosper and be in good health even as your soul prospers. This is KyMichele
And Kimmy.
and Kimmy, and I look forward to chatting with you on the next episode of Conversations.